Hey, Fix listeners. I want to take a minute to give you all an update on our DPO, Smile Now Dental Group. In case you haven't heard, we've been opening up locations all across the country for doctors just like yourselves. We started several offices this year to show proof of concept, and it's been off to the races ever since. So, if you're looking for an equitable partnership opportunity where you can have a profitable business that supports you doing full arch, I'd love to hear from you. We're looking to add several locations in the next year and want to offer the training and support necessary to make one of those yours. If you'd like to learn more, you can go ahead and hit me up on Instagram at Dr. Tyler J. Tolbert, or shoot me an email at tyler@smilenowdentalgroup.com and say hey. Now, without further ado, let's get back to the show. My name is Dr. Tyler Tolbert.
And I'm Dr. Soren Poppy,
And you're listening to the Fix Podcast.
your source for all things implant dentistry.
I was just going to ask next, like if you are looking to do a mandibular sub, right? A patient that's super resorbed in the mandible, can't do root form implants, or if you do, they're coming out the canines and you're going to have a huge cantilever. What are first steps that a doctor takes to get proper education on doing the surgical side of subs? And then what labs or what resources do you recommend for the prosthetic side?
So Root Lab is no longer taking new doctors for subs. They're phasing out. And I'm sure it's probably inherent to the legality of it. They're not FDA approved. They use FDA approved alloys, but that implant's not FDA approved. I do have another lab where I have some retired employees from Root Lab, have lots of experience with Subperiosteals that I've also put in my 2 cents on design, and they run it by me, and I say, here, why don't we do this or that? America's Dental Lab, but it's 100% analog. Nate Farley and I have been doing some digital designs, and we're working with some companies to do direct laser metal sintering. I like the milled ones. Ramsey Amin has done 2 milled ones with his lab tech. Beautiful implant. The last one in particular, I loved it. And he had it where it was fixed detachable. He could, screw retain his teeth on top of it. But his lab technician, I think it took him 24 hours to mill this thing. And, I've spoke with several milling facilities, and you have to program it to mill this thing, and it's just cost prohibitive for milling. Yeah. So direct laser metal sintering is definitely the most cost-effective way. But then you come up with a rougher product, which has to be finished, and then then they come up with, well, what are you going to do? You're going to sandblast this, acid etch it. Implants have to be passivated. A lot of people don't even know that's a process. They have to be passivated so that they're biocompatible. Have to have all the foreign material and metals removed from them. So it's a process of acid washing. Nate Farley does a beautiful job. He researched it, and he and I printed out a couple and delivered both of them a few months ago at one of the Full Arch Masters, the first sub course that we did at his office in Phoenix. We'll probably run that course again. I also teach for Orca. I placed one last year as a demonstration surgery in the OR, and it was great because we popped this thing in, and it was a cast chrome cobalt chrome molybdenum cast by America's Dental Lab in Kansas. And we snapped this thing in, and you could hear it literally pop in.
Mm-hmm.
I had no screws in it, and I'm pulling up on it. It won't come out.
That's great. Yeah.
And so everybody's like, you got to have a bunch of screws in these things for them to survive. I literally put one screw in it just to show people how to put a screw in it. It didn't need a screw. But Juan Gonzalez is wandering around like he is, and I said, Juan, come take this implant out. And he starts pulling up on it. He goes, I'm going to break the jaw, So, I mean, these things can fit great, and screws are really there just for primary stability on mandibular subs.
Yeah.
And maxillary subs, it's a different game. If you look at a PSI, they're more in the analogy of, okay, this is what a bone plate that we use for fractures, and oral surgeons understand that.
Yeah.
I've never placed one in my life. Okay. I mean, I understand why they use them. And I think if I was on a desert island and somebody had a broken jaw, I could probably, screw it up pretty bad, but get them back together. But, at what point does that technology and that technique cross over to now I'm going to put a strut on it, attach to it, do a permucosal post and MUA and attach tooth to it. How does that orthopedic plate function under load? Okay, and how many screws in 1 millimeter, half millimeter thick membranous bone are going to resist occlusal loading? Okay, and so when I hear people on the podium say it's titanium, it's new technology, we've cured all the problems, all the old PSI or plastic implants that never worked, and this is great. Come to my company. We're going to make an implant for you, and you're going to live happily ever after. I think it's very disingenuous because I don't think we're there, especially on the maxilla. And a lot of the designs I see on the mandible are very poor designs. There's too much metal at the crest. There's too much metal underneath the mucosa. It's not remote enough away from your permucosa. And I think that, call me old school. I am. I'm a boomer. But I just think that we take what I gleaned from people who've been doing it decades before me and have peer-reviewed published, studies on it and decades of successful implementation of these subperiosteal implants and bring a little bit of that into what we're doing today with PSIs. Don't just sweep it under the carpet.
Well, I think, you kind of jeer at yourself by saying, I'm a boomer, right? But I mean, as you said earlier, you've got patients that have been in prostheses that you delivered 3 decades ago. And so your processes and your planning clearly for quite some time has been pretty sound. I think something that's happening with a lot of my generation of full arch folks is that we celebrate very quickly, right? I mean, it's literally like we go and make the post the same day and we say, hey, we do this now. But I did a quad zygo yesterday. Do I say I do quad zygos? Well, I don't think I can really say that until I've got 1, 5, 10 years out that's, doing okay. Yeah. I can't say I do it because I did it yesterday,
Well, yeah, you could do it. And then, you guys keep trying to nail me down. I feel like a politician because I keep dodging your question.
You deflect well. You do well enough.
I've been an expert witness for defense, and they try to nail you down to yes or no, and I'm always yes this or no that.
Yeah.
And truly, that's the way it is with these implants. Yes, this, no, that. What do you do in this scenario? It's all patient specific implementation. There's not a black and white. There's just lots and lots of area of gray. Now, my hope for you guys and for myself and dentistry is that it becomes less gray and more black and white. And I think we'll get there. The technology is improving. Printing of the implants improving. We got to come up with a program to design these easy. We can't do it easily with Exocad. We got to take it through 3 or 4 different programs to get what the result we want. I want to visit with some of these foreign designers and see what they're doing, see if they've got something better than what we've got. But you can't have a prosthodontist spending 24 hours designing this thing and then wanting to pay $5,000 for it. Yeah. You've got to be able to delegate this design technique to a technician,
Right.
And they're very expensive. I mean, people complain about the KLS price and, being 20 grand. I see it, we tried to start up a company. We looked at FDA approval, got a consultant, and, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get the process started. And, I'm like, I don't need this, So, my thing is, to work with the doctors, work with the companies, and try to see what we can do to remedy the situation where there's not just one FDA approved implant in the United States.
Yeah.
We need multiple. And then, we need education nationally for the doctors to understand it, but we have to understand that all this is going to be biased. Some doctors are KOLs for certain companies. Some have a motive to this, and to me, I'm at a point in my career where it's time to pay it forward,
Yeah, no, I mean, I can certainly appreciate that. And I think that, as far as where, these customs will fit into the full arch world is like, as we've said many times, the maxillary stuff, it's as gray could really be. The mandibular stuff makes a lot of sense. I see patients all the time where I think, man, I don't have a solution for this person for their mandible, and I don't have a lot of backup plans like we do in the maxilla. I know that a sub could really work, but at the same time, I also understand that there's just not a whole lot of lab options that really make a whole lot of economic sense for these patients. And I really do hope that that'll improve. I do think certain advents that we're seeing will benefit that. I think that one day, you won't have anybody having to design anything for 24 hours because AI will be faster than any of us ever could be, right? But we do need the data to support that, right? AI works off of data, and I appreciate that there's people like yourself that have cases that have been in the mouth for a long time. You've been able to parse out some of the tried and true design aspects of these, and hopefully we'll see in the near future mandibular subs at the very least becoming a more viable option, because there's just a huge, I think there is a lot of opportunity for that. There's many patients I've seen very recently that I just told them I just don't have a solution for you. I know it could work, but it's not viable right now. I can't do it for you.
Well, and there are people placing them and designing them.
Mhm.
Most of it's in Europe. It's completely different climate than it is here in the States.
Of course, yeah.
We just need to really watch and really analyze that design and really analyze the data. You've got to do a deep dive and say, okay, what's your definition of success? What do you consider a complication? What do you consider a failure? How many of the patients had infections? How many of them did you have to do revisions on? What kind of revisions did you do? How many permucosal sites did you have? How thick were they? And one of the things that I'm working with the companies now is like, okay, let's say we do a design and you want an MUA coming out. Well, the guys were having the MUA be part of the substructure of the implant. Okay. So you screw on your zirconia or PMMA or tie bar or whatever on top of it, and you had the famous abutment screw fracture inside your implant. And now you're trying to fish that thing out and you can't get it out. I've literally been in a course where we put the implant in and the MUA, we couldn't get the abutment screw to fit into it, and it had been milled, and it's like, okay, bigger problem. You need to have a removable MUA to build your implant so that if you do break the abutment screws or what, you can.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're looking at what? Adding MUAs, removable to meso bars, or that you need to ask about. And, I went to IDS meeting in Germany, in Cologne, and spoke with several companies that are making them. And it was amazing how many companies had their own version of sub. And, through the language barrier, talking to them and stuff, and speaking about these things. And then when you say, wouldn't it be a good idea if this was removable? And, I'd get 10 reasons why no, it's not, or we can't do it or shouldn't do it or whatever. And I'm like, well, you're not practicing dentistry like I do and see shit break, and, you need to have a back door on this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's little things like that you really, that goes back to you don't know what you don't know, And so people want to do away with the meso bar and go to MUA, but is it removable? What happens if you break your abutment screw? What happens if one segment of the implant, if you've got it in multiple pieces, becomes unbonded, unintegrated from the bone, but it's still in a nice capsule and is functional? Is that MUA going to hold your prosthesis, or are you going to keep having abutment screws break?
Right.
Meso bar would hold all that together. So on the mandible, the tripodial sub, the world famous tripodial, it comes out of the ramus, goes back into the canine, goes back into the ramus. You've got wings here, you got wings here. The meso bar holds all three pieces apart, totally avoids that molar region where all the problems are. Well, that meso bar serves a function, so you really don't want to get away from it just to go to MUAs.
Mm-hmm.
Can you not put MUAs on top of that bar?
Exactly. That's what, and I said that earlier. I don't know if you missed it, but we're working on MUAs on top of the bar.
Okay.
And and even You can do it with MUAs that are Nobel compliant, or even put ball attachments on it and go with an overdenture. And you also have to consider what's the amount of bone loss on a sub patient versus an AOX patient. I mean, everybody's wanting to do FP1s now, and compare an FP1 patient to a sub patient who's got 8 millimeters, or like the one I did in Guatemala, the ridge is 5 millimeters tall. I got 35 millimeters of bilateral dehiscent nerve that I got to expose and uncover. And I mean, it's crazy. So does that patient need a fixed arch, screw retained, or would they benefit from something they can remove at home, get to it and cleanse it, and something that's got some O-rings, got some plastic, got some give to it, that doesn't send all that stress to your implant? And so that was the rationale, because that's all we had back then was overdentures. But the rationale was, get your occlusion where it's not traumatic, give plastic teeth there, and, do O-ring attachments, don't screw it down so it has a little bit of give and play to it so you don't overload this implant. And so, today it's a PSI, it's bonded to bone. I got 15 screws, hold it in. We're going to do 20-degree teeth. We're going to use zirconia. And the patient's never going to be able to take it out. Maybe they'll come back and see the hygienist once every year. Maybe they won't. And hopefully the soft tissue underneath that sub's going to survive.
That's a lot of prayer.
A lot of miracles in one bout.
I mean, make this thing removable. They get to it. And we didn't have Sonicares when I started. We had some company in Benton, Arkansas made rotodents, go around to. And we used to have them use that. Sonicare came out. It's like a world life changer. Okay.
Yeah.
But, removable overdenture.
Yeah.
Just pop it on, pop it off. And then the buccal flange helps protect the tissue, keeps the food out. It only comes out when the patient pulls it out.
Right.
I tell my students, I'm like, overdenture is not a problem for the patient. It's not a hard sell. First of all, you tell them the benefits of it and that it's not going to come out unless you take it out. They don't have the problem with it. People who have a problem with it is the dentist.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I've got a problem with it. I don't want to do them because I can't make it in my lab. I got to send it off to Kansas to my guys.
Yeah.
And I love working with them. They're great guys to work with. But it's just a pain in the butt. It'd be much easier to do MUAs.
Yeah, I think we're trying to hit a home run where a single would do. And I think you made a good comment about that patient in Guatemala. Does this person really need screwed in teeth? I mean, this person has a falla. Does this person, they'd be happy just to have teeth that last a long time, that have mitigated all these risks? Like, do they really need to be fixed? Does
this did a sub with the Simon O. We did a analog design. So it was waxed up.
Yeah.
It was pulled off the model. It was invested in cast, chrome cobalt balloon by the guys in Kansas. I played a little joke on him. I did O and H in the front.
Oh.
And he got a little nervous and he said, I can't put that in the patient's head.
Oh, man. Oh, I'd love to see that before I'm bored. Yeah.
Can't wrong on the occlusion. And so the meso bar was a little jacked up, but we got it fixed, and that's where I say it's, you got to get your prosthetics right. You got to get your records to your lab right. And it all has to be transposed right. And that's where Nate Farley comes in as a prosthodontist. I mean, this guy's records were incredible. He's like got the patient cotton rolled. He's verified that everything's seated. And then he's stitching everything in Exocad. He's taking it over to Blender. He's taking it over to Mesh Mixer. And I mean, the guy spends hours on these things. I mean, his design should cost $20,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stupid.
One more question I have about subs, and we've talked a lot about how especially like, younger doctors who are just jumping into it. They're going to these lectures and they're hearing that, the customized sub is like the new best thing. It's better than Zygos, better than this and that. And you're pushing people away from that, which makes total sense. Another thing that I want to just probably mention is, especially in the US, and we've talked about patients being litigious, these subs, like, if something happens to the patient, there's nothing that the doctor has to stand on, correct? Like they're in hot water no matter what. And my understanding is that's in the mandibular subs as well, correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes. I mean, there is literature review, albeit old, that shows a high success rate with properly made mandibular subs with the proper occlusion. I can get you literature review on that. Okay, I can get you a study or two on the maxillary subs showing the success rates on that. But current literature on long-term success rate of these new implants is just not. I wouldn't feel comfortable. Put it this way: I wouldn't want to be your defense expert and
Right.
tell you you're going to win. It's going to be a lot easier to be the plaintiff's expert and just crucify you on the stand. Like, how many of these done? And where'd you learn to do this? And where's your lit? And where's the studies? Where's all this stuff? It's not going to be there. Is it FDA approved? It's not, unless it's KLS. And I'm not a fan of their design at all. So, when I was your age, very aggressive, trying to do all the latest and greatest and newest stuff. And I'm still pretty aggressive. I mean, I'm a boomer and I'm 100% digital. And I got a lab upstairs. But my old mentor, Dr. Joe, and he's in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas. He used to say something on the podium. He'd have people international coming in to hear him because he was such a brilliant man. But he said, I'm from Wynne, Arkansas. You can't get there from here. Okay? I mean, he's in the middle of nowhere, but you literally can't get there from where you're at now,
Yeah.
But he would say, the cutting edge, the sword of the cutting edge cuts both ways, So, you can be on the cutting edge, the leading edge of technology, but realize you can also get cut from that leading edge.
Sure.
Just be prepared for that. So, my thing is, work closely with and have a good community wherever you are, ENT, oral surgeon, prosthodontist, periodontist, whoever you have, to work with you on these. And don't just do this fly by night.
Yeah.
And understand that you have to have a relationship with that patient. And that's the beautiful thing about practice in Arkansas. I mean, everybody's like, practice in Arkansas? I mean, I got 3.3 million people in the entire state. I have to market 2/3 of the state to get enough patients. Okay. And I literally have patients drive hours to get here, And now with the internet and Google location, it's a nightmare marketing, to these patients and stuff. But, you deal with these practices and I'm losing my train of thought here, guys. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I mean, something that you were kind of alluding to, when considering getting into this, and, I think about it a lot, is you kind of, you have to really ask yourself why it is that you would want to do this, right?
So that you got me back.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my thing is, have a community, have a relationship with the patient, and you've got to be able to let them know that things can happen, but you're there for them. And I have a little saying with my patients: we're like the Marines here; we don't leave anybody behind. And even if it costs me money, I'll redo the case. And my thing is, you got to come in for recall, and you got to be responsible, and you got to do what we tell you to do. If you go away 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're done. I mean, you own it, okay? But if I've got a patient that's coming in every 6 months for recall, even if they're out 5, 10 years, I mean, I'm not sure as hell not charging a full fee. And most of the time, we're friends, and the wife's bringing us brownies every Christmas or something. And the wonderful thing about practicing in a state like Arkansas is the mentality of the patient. It's not so adversarial. And trust me, we've got lawyers, and we all get thumped, okay? But especially back when I got started, it wasn't as much of a problem.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I empathize with you guys that are in bigger states, bigger cities, with more competition, more people trying to pull the rug out from you. And that's why I encourage people, go get your fellow, go get your ABOI, you know? And, I have not had to go to court. I have had some records called for and, people this and that, but never successfully been litigated and sued. Knock on wood when I say that, but I've been an expert witness, and they start saying, "Well, he's a fellow of this and diplomat of this and that," and even if it doesn't mean anything to the oral surgeon down the street from you, it means something to the jury. Okay, that you've done an extra step, and I'm not saying go out and get bogus credentials from organizations that don't actually test you and see what you really do know, but get bona fide credentials, be proud of them, and promote them, and they can come back and they can help you. I really feel like they can be, so if you're going to do these implants, dot your I's, cross your T's, have a community, have credentials, have doctors that are in your corner that you can go explain to. I mean, I told you guys earlier today, the complication for the pterygoid in Dan Holtzclaw's book. Infratemporal faucet. That's me. One of my first ones. Yeah, I'm that guy.
I was wondering if you were going to say this on record.
Behavior.com. I'm like, you're really going to do? I'll make you a contributing author. I said, now you can leave my name out of that one. To all the doctors said, this can happen to anybody. I'm 30 plus years in my career. And, I'm like, yeah, okay, I've seen this. I understand the concept. I got this. And I screwed it up. And it's in the infratemporal fossa. And you know what? I go across the yard to my next door neighbor who's my oral surgeon, and I'm like, head down. And he's like, dude, it's not a big deal. I put thirds there all the time. We got you. He said, come back to my office in 2 weeks. We'll get it out. We had it out in 5 minutes. It was a non-issue. Told the patient immediately. She had a few little moments of trismus. It wasn't a major complication, but it could have been a really big issue. But if I'm a young doctor and I've got this massive bilateral oral fistula and it's failing implant on an 80-year-old who's going to have to go to the hospital, go to the ENT, probably going to have to go to an oncological ENT and get a bone graft, a flap graft to restore maxilla, obturator. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to have to defend that. So yeah, there's some trophies to get on your walls, and there's some trophies to let some of the people that can take the risk and tolerate the risk. Maybe this needs to be done in institutions. Maybe this needs to be done in foreign countries. And, let's get some studies out and see where it's at. But, I don't have all the answers for you on the maxillary. Yeah. I can tell you what to do on the mandible all day long. But I think I know what I would do. But I've been 39 years, and I've only done demonstration surgeries on other people's patients.
That says something.
So I've never
not in your house.
Not in my house.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that really, it goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier, and that led to your point as well. Is you have to ask yourself, why are you interested in doing this? Like, what is really the point? What are you after?
So John Minischetti, AAID past president, 10 in his study. He's reporting on HA coatings, 100% success right now. What's his definition of success? I don't know.
Yeah.
It wasn't in there. Arthur Molzin, another AAID past president. I used some slides from him. I said, Art, give me some old sub slides. I don't have any maxillary subs. Do you? He goes, oh, shit. That's what he said. He goes, oh, shit. Yeah, I did. How'd it go? Well, he said, I got one that lasted 20 years. And so we put that one up. And what do you think he did? He took it out and he put in quad zygotes.
Yeah.
But how long are quad zygote cases going to last now? How long is my AOX going to last now? When I got into this mesh, we had everything between the middle frame was A, B, C, D, E, 5 implants. And depending on whether you did 3, 5, 2, whatever, you had locations for it. You connected it with the meso bar. You did an overdenture on it. And then Palomala comes out and blows everything up. And, we start doing AOX, and I never looked back.
Yeah.
Early adopter, and I remember I was in my actual ABOI board examination, and there was a doctor from Kentucky, Sheeran, I believe. He was a GP, and he was one of the first people. And he and his partner, the periodontist, were teaching for Nobel. Were some of the first people, and he was telling me what he was doing. I'm like, "You've lost your mind. You know, these are tilted implants. You can't load these off axis because that was the big thing back then." And then when you get thinking about all your lateral incisors and centrals and stuff, that's all loaded off axis.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Be a student of your trade, of your craft. Be an expert in all aspects of it. You know, so with these subs, don't just let somebody blindly say, yeah, these works. Call Joe's Dental Lab over here or Joe's manufacturing facility over here. They've got this 19-year-old from Italy that's going to design it, or this other 19-year-old from Portugal that's going to design it, and it's all going to be great. Kumbaya.
Yeah.
You need to be the doctor. Same reason I don't like guides. And I gave a lot of students, that were taking their exams and said, well, tell me about your design on your guide. Well, I sent it to the lab. Okay. Well, they sent it back, and I told them that it was okay. And, to me, I did like 10 guides with Teeth and Hour when it first came out. We did our first guided surgery on TV in like 55 minutes. Okay. I designed those guides. They were printed in Sweden and sent over. Okay. But if you're going to do guides, you need to understand, and you need to be very much into that. If you're going to do sub implants, you need to know the design. You need to be able to tell that technician, no, we need to come a little more anterior with that strut. We need to put the permucosal post here. The substructure needs to be a little thinner, a little more delicate. And the answers I've been looking at, and I've done some very sophisticated AI research on, is how thin can we go with titanium and it not break? And another great thing my Dr. Littlejohn used to say is statistics don't lie, but liars use statistics. Okay? And I'm gonna update it, and I'm gonna say AI, or excuse me, finite element analysis doesn't lie, but liars use finite element analysis to justify what they're doing, And I've never had a subperiosteal implant break. Now, I've got a ton of examples from the 70s that they had casting defects and this and that. And of course, it's a harder alloy, cobalt chrome aluminum. How thick does titanium have to be to survive? And if you use these protected occlusal schemes that I'm promoting here, does it really have to be as thick as they are? So there's a lot of things that's going to be really interesting to see the next 5 and 10 years how it pans out. But I do think PSIs are here to stay. I think they have their place. I think that it's wonderful that they're coming back. But I just want to promote a cautionary tale, especially if you're early on in your career.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a lot easier time defending myself and getting cooperative care from other specialists than a young surgeon is. He's just trying to make a name for himself.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, sometimes on this show, when we, talk about, maybe this isn't avant-garde, but when we start talking about more exotic types of implant treatment, people want to listen to it so they can learn how to do it. But maybe that's not the most valuable thing you can come away with. Maybe it's a lot of good reasons not to do it and just wait on it, learn more, take your time, get your credentials right, and do it maybe when the time is right, when it's appropriate. There's plenty of work to be done short of getting into these gray areas and doing things.
People want to know. I mean, literally, I was going to Nate's office to help him put in a sub, and Ryan had this maxillary sub, and the patient's sick. We can't get it in. We think she's not going to make it, but we're going to put in 2 subs. And then one of our oral surgeons says, hey, man, I got one I need to have done. I'm like, well, there's 3 subs. It's like, Ryan, you need to do a course.
Yeah,
so
that's funny.
He literally put it online, and within a day and a half, it was full.
Wow.
Okay. And everybody came to Phoenix. Nate's got a great facility, and we had closed circuit TV, and we put in two of the three that we had scheduled, and it was great. And like Orca, there's a need and there's a want, but it's the ability to get the patients to the residents, to get the records, to get the designs. And I've even got manufacturers that will donate. I've got two right now that will jump right in the middle of this. And so, we're in talks, or Simon and them are in talks. I'm not part of the board there, but, there's been discussion of bringing subperiosteal course to Orca. Okay. But you guys that are watching the podcast, it's going to be the same message there, and it was the same message at Full Arch Masters. There's safe things to do, and there's not proven things to do yet. And just see where you are in your career and how much risk are you willing to assume for a particular patient. If you're mom or dad or aunt or uncle, or sister or whatever, then you can assume more risk. But if it's a full fee paying patient that you have no connection with, you need to be very careful.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, Dr. Jerik, we have covered decades of learning in the world of CSIs, PSIs, and learned so much from your experience. And I'm leaving with more questions than answers, I think, and in a very good way. I have a lot more that I need to learn about this modality, and I really appreciate you spending the time to come on and talk about it. I was just curious if you had any other closing thoughts or encouraging sentiments for other full arch surgeons out here, anyone listening to the podcast that might be interested in learning more about your work or whatever else that it is that you do with Orca and all those good things.
Well, I'm available. I'm on a lot of different threads and stuff, but I'm more than willing to look at some things and help point people in the right directions, hopefully. There are other doctors that have done this. Dr. Picos, I know he's done 200. I think he and I are going to do something. We're going to be speaking at the upcoming Orca Symposium in Las Vegas in January. Be there,
Yeah.
okay?
You bet.
Ramsey Amin has done several subs. He's, I think, speaking at the AID meeting that's coming up in November. I don't know what the topic is on that or what he's covering, but if he's going to go into PSIs or what, but he's got some material there. And, we're looking to try to bring this more to, to the dentist through, one group or the other. And I don't have a lecture facility or organization. I'm a hired gun. I enjoy doing this. I don't need to run the show. I love giving back. I love being with the young docs and meeting new people and making the connections and, just keep on Facebook, look at your Orca, look at your Full Arch Masters, Adam Hogan, he may do something with his stuff, I've even been in talks with Mod Institute, we may do something with these guys. So there's lots of good learning opportunities. Vishy Brahman has done a number of subs, and his experience with the PSIs is more than mine. And again, he's the expert of experts, KOL. He can weather the storms of the failures. And, let's see what happens with the work that Vishy. But, he and I worked in the past very closely on designs. Even he and I, Nate, have done some implants together. That's how we all got tied up together. Nate had a patient that needed an implant, so we did that. But I wish I had better resources. We did that. But I wish I had the Orca for everybody. But come to Ramsey and we'll get some information. I'm sure there'll be a course come up, and we'll get the information out there, and everybody come see us.
Awesome.
Hey.
Hey.
God, like what you guys have done. I think the guy that was on there, forget the doctor's
Rick.
And,
Myron, yeah.
yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
Great
whole different level.
guy.
You know?
Yeah.
Keep up the good work, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And thank you for inviting me to be a part of
Yes,
this.
sir. Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
All right,
Take care.
have a good evening.